Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Tariff Clarification 2023 call to go over the draft tariff language. My name is Elena Coppola-Alford, representing ISO Stakeholder Affairs here at the California ISO, and I'll be facilitating today's meeting. I'm joined by Sarah Kozel, Counsel, Legal and Regulatory, Jacqueline Meredith, Tariff Specialist, Paralegal and Office Administration, and Maisie Marby-Smith, Legal Clerk, Legal and Regulatory. Before we get started, I'm going to go over a couple housekeeping items and reminders. So this call is being recorded for informational and convenience purposes only. Any related transcripts should not be reprinted without the ISO's permission. Please keep your comments professional and respectful, and try and be brief and refrain from saying what's already been said so we can manage time efficiently. And then to raise your hand, if you connected your audio or use the call me option, you can select the raise hand icon located on the bottom center toolbar, or #2 if you dialed into the meeting. And please remember to say your name and affiliation before you make your comment. If you need any technical assistance during your meeting, you can send a chat to the event producer. His name is Mark Fox, and Mark Way. You may also send a chat question to me, Elena Coppola-Alford. And I'm going to hand it over to Sarah.
Great, thank you, Elena. I am going to switch over to sharing my screen now. All right, Elena, can you see that? Does that look?
I can see that. That looks great.
Great, okay. Well, thank you everyone for joining today. This should actually be a pretty quick meeting. We are going to go through the matrix of tariff clarifications, a little background on this process. This is a sort of semi-annual process that the CAISO goes through where we file changes to the tariff at FERC that are, I would characterize them more as cleanup than anything else. Occasionally there may be a incorrect tariff reference, internal reference, or a typo, a misspelling. And we do use this process also to clarify things in the tariff that, maybe processes that we go through, or things that, or things that are just not clear exactly the process in the tariff. The intention here is not to change policy. We're not changing any processes. We're just making things more clear in the tariff for stakeholders and market participants. Today I'll walk through these. There's a few that have that we received comments on from 6 cities, so thank you for that. We'll also answer questions as they come up, so feel free to raise your hand, put things in the chat like Elena said, and we'll address those. We do plan to post an additional matrix, or a new matrix, I guess, version 2, that responds to some of the comments we received when we're accepting some of those proposed changes. So we will make sure that that is posted on the website, and we'll also make sure to get that out to everyone. We'll notify everyone on this call that it's been posted, so you get separate notification of that. But with that, we'll walk through the matrix. This is the same document that was posted on the website, and so you should have seen it, hopefully, and if not, it's available on the Recurring Stakeholder Initiatives page. I'm going to see if I can zoom in just a little bit here. Okay. So like I said, this should be pretty brief, but again, feel free to interject if you have questions. This first change here is a clarification. We have the reason for change described, but I'll just note that this idea here is that we are seeking to align the tagging product codes, the WEC product codes that are used by other balancing authority areas. We initially had put this limitation on using the specific C-RE product code, not recognizing that others used it. This is for the 10-minute recallable reserve transactions. And so we are clarifying here that we will use this if it's associated with the delivery of emergency assistance energy. We did receive a comment from 6 cities that there's some confusion in the language we're proposing about whether this is bidirectional or not. And so we do want to clarify in this call that it is bidirectional. We appreciate the comments, and we will change the language here to make that more clear. So we will make sure that gets into the next version that's posted. So thank you for that. The next section here, we are aligning the timelines for terminations of different agreements. There's has been some issues or identified issues that could be a problem where certain types of agreements have different termination timelines, and one entity may have multiple agreements with conflicting timelines. So we're just fixing this so that everything aligns. The next, see if I can close this. There you go, that's a little easier to read. Next section is section 6.5.2.3.1.2. We also received a comment from 6 cities on this. And here we are indicating that in events where the CAISO does not publish the CAISO forecast of CAISO demand by 6 p.m. of the day prior, that we will post this within 30 days. I think the comment we received from 6 cities, and Bonnie, I see you're on the call, so feel free to interject if I'm mischaracterizing any of your comments, but my understanding here is that the question was about whether or why, I suppose, we need this opportunity to post an additional, within the additional 30 days. And the response to, because this is a kind of before the fact posting typically, whereas all of the other examples in the reason for change, those are after the fact reports already. And so we just want to clarify that we understand that some market participants do track the variances between the forecast of demand and the forecast used in the day ahead market. So we want to make sure that we're providing accurate and all the available data on the website so those market participants can track that. There's another question that related to one of the other sections here, 6.5.12. This is one of the sections in the reason for change column. And that section, the comment was that the title or the heading of the section did not refer to what was actually contained in the text. And so I will say thank you for that. We'll take a look at that and include it in this round of bucket changes if we deem we need to change one or the other. So thank you for that.
Sarah, we have a question. We have a question from Bonnie Blair.
Great. Go ahead. Thanks, Bonnie.
Paula, your line is now
Blair,
unmuted.
can you hear
Please
me
go ahead.
okay?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, good. So on the after the fact provision of forecasts of CAISO demand, I don't know how often you revise that. I mean, to me, it would make sense to perhaps provide after the fact the forecast that was used in the day ahead market run for the reasons you described, that people want to track the difference between the forecast and the the ultimate demand. But would you be providing forecasts that you didn't use in the day ahead market run after the fact also?
I suppose that's not clear. My understanding is that we would only be posting what was used in the day ahead market, but I can confirm that and we will address that.
Yeah,
Does the answer to that change your perspective? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that would make sense to me if you were just using, and there's some language in off the top of my head, I can't remember which one. One of these other referenced sections has some language in it that refers to the data reflected in the successful day ahead market run, or words to that effect. And maybe you could use that to say that when, instead of saying CAISO will endeavor to provide this data, you could make clear that what you're going to provide is the forecast used in the day-ahead market run.
Okay,
that
so
make
add
sense?
specificity to that. Yeah, that's good feedback. We'll take that back. Thank you, Bonnie. Okay, anything else on that section?
There are currently no other questions. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Elena. So we'll move on to the next section. This is 9.3.10.6.1. This is a cross-reference correction, so a typo. Pretty straightforward. Next section is 10.1.2. And here we're providing a clarification that the CAISO maintains the effective revenue quality meter data and settlement quality meter data. And so not all of this revenue, or excuse me, not all of this data is maintained. We maintain the most correct version. So that's a correction here. The next section, 11.2.4.1, this is related to the integrated forward market congestion charge. And this is just a typo that incorrectly included supply in 2 locations where we should have used the word demand. The IFM congestion charge is calculated as demand demand minus supply. And that was not reflected accurately in these 2 sentences. So we're correcting that. Moving on to section 27.9, again, a typo, correcting the spelling, or I suppose correcting the word to the correct defined term. Onward to 31.2.1. This one is one that also is more of a clarification than a typo, and so here we are describing, this section describes how the non-competitive component of the LMP, the non-competitive congestion component of the LMP is calculated. And currently the tariff has this language in red where we describe how the competitive component is calculated. This is inaccurate. We do not actually calculate the competitive component on its own. When we calculate the non-competitive congestion portion of the LMP, what is remaining is the competitive congestion component. And so this is a clarification there. Okay, scrolling down, we have an additional, in 34.20.2, an additional correction to the subsection numbering. This is in the titles, in the headers. We additionally have changes to section 40.4.7.3. These look like they're the same change, but one is related to the CAISO notifying scheduling coordinators, and one is related to the CAISO notifying the local regulatory authority, or the LRA. Both of these, we are removing language related to an approved maintenance outage. That is because those types of outages are contained elsewhere in a separate process, and it's not necessary to include those 2 pieces here. So we're not removing any process. Again, we're just removing the reference here because it's a separate process. We have additional typographic errors here in 40.4.7.3 again. We needed to change this to the correct tariff section. This is in two sentences in that section. On Appendix Q, Section 2.2.1, we are adding a clarification here that the form of the letter of intent for eligible intermittent resource that's becoming a participating intermittent resource, that form of the letter, we are including a clarification that we can specify that on the CAISO website. to add some additional flexibility here to ensure that the market participants can get the accurate form of the letter in an easier to find place. An additional change to section Q, switch this here, and I'll just note section Q is the eligible intermittent resources protocol. So that was the last change, and then similarly this change. This section on forecasting had a circular reference, and so we're just removing that circular reference. In section S, we have what looks like quite a bit of language here on confidentiality. This is an administrative error, so this is actually not new language. Appendix S is the small generator interconnection procedures. It's an older version of those procedures that's not used for new interconnections. But we are updating the FERC e-tariff record because this language had been inadvertently left out. So the language is not new. It's been approved by FERC. It's on our website in our tariff, but the database, the tariff record that FERC keeps, the e-tariff library, this section was inadvertently left out at some point. And so we are just filing it through this process so it gets mapped to the correct place in that e-tariff library. So no new language here, but some explanation there. Okay, and then we have quite a few changes to Appendix X that are corrections to the correct section within Appendix X. Appendix X is the approved project sponsor agreement, and so these are internal references to different parts of that agreement, and so these will often get fixed later through the process of actually signing those agreements between all of the parties. But we want to correct this in our tariff because they are incorrect cross-references. So we're fixing a couple of those, including the word article versus section. In section 12.4 of Appendix Appendix X, we left out an S, so fixing a typo there. And a few additional similar cross-references. And then the final change here, clarification that we're proposing, is related to Appendix DD. This is related to interconnection and the allocation of deliverability. This is the current tariff appendix that we use. This section is about seeking or retaining TPD, so transmission plan deliverability, and we're clarifying two pieces here. One that we're seeking, one that we are, this is the process by which interconnection customers both seek and retain or retain that TPD. And then separately, we're also removing the reference to group A or B. We did receive a comment from 6 cities on this that asking about the removal of groups A and B. And so I can clarify on the call here that we're removing that reference because the way it is now looks like this section is exclusive for group A or B, when in actuality it applies to group B as well, and may apply to other groups if things change in the future. That would certainly be a filing at FERC if we were changing any of the groups, but we wanted to take out the language here. Apologize for my dog. Take out the language here that makes it look exclusive. So Group A is our interconnection customers that have a PPA or load serving entities serving their own load. Group B, shortlisted for a PPA, and then Group B is the one that I wanted to make sure we included here, or we knew that this section also covered. These are interconnection customers that do not have a PPA or are shortlisted, but get TPD or transmission plan deliverability, and there's requirements within that within a separate section 8.9.2.3 that that disallows them from delaying their milestones in their GIAs. So again, clarifying that this applies to multiple groups and not just A and D. Bonnie, do you have follow-up questions on that, or does that answer your question?
You still hear me? Hi. No, that answers the question. Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, well, I was thinking this would take half an hour, took 23 minutes. So I'll open this up for questions, and while additional questions while people are potentially raising their hands, if there are any, I'll just say, again, thank you, Bonnie, for your comments, 6 cities. We will post an additional, or excuse me, an updated version of this, and then we are looking to file these clarifications in the next couple of weeks.
Okay, and I don't see any raised hands or comments in the chat.
Okay, well, thank you all for your time today. And do feel free to reach out if anything comes up to myself or Jackie or Maisie or Yelena. Reach out to any of us, and we'd be happy to answer additional questions.
All right. And that concludes our conference. Thank you for joining us. You may now disconnect.